Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors meeting. Today we're having a special meeting to discuss marijuana in a continuing series of discussions here that will eventually come to a decision by the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors about the commercial legalization of marijuana and its usage in Del Norte County. As part of this series of meetings that we've been having, these discussions really involve around the education of the board and the community specific to commercial legalization in Del Norte County. And part of these discussions, as we begin to move forward, we'll have two more meetings, one in the near future specific to taxation, and then a wrap-up meeting, hopefully with a decision by the board in mid to late October about what the board's will be specific to commercial, and maybe even some changes in medical. I'm not sure at this point, but at this point we are looking at an educational discussion today, and we have some visitors that are going to help educate us based on their long-standing understanding of rolling out legalization of commercial marijuana in their backyard. But before we get to that discussion, Supervisor Berkowitz, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's good to see some fellow folks here from the city today and some of our neighbors throughout Del Norte County. Welcome, everyone. As we discussed, John Young, Agricultural Commissioner from Yolo County, will be here. Many of us board members had an opportunity to hear John in Palm Springs this year during the California State Association of Counties meeting. John gave a very formative presentation to us at that time, and there's been many changes that have taken place in Yolo County to where they've actually rolled out some pricing structures to date that will help guide Del Norte County if we decide to move forward on the commercial side. Anyways, without further ado, John, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair Howard and members of the board for having me from Yolo County. It's quite a drive to get up here, but this is a place that I very much enjoy being. A lot has changed since I presented in Palm Springs. I've been doing this for about a year. So it's probably a little unusual to have an ag commissioner kind of running a marijuana task force. Now we probably should change the name to Cannabis Task Force. But as we've kind of rolled forward, we started medical, then we had adult use come in place. Adult use has been married up with medical. Yolo County is very much still medical only. It's really a choice of our policymakers at the board level, and really you have to have everybody on board if you're going to do it. And for law enforcement, they're just not there on adult use. So we base our decisions on having buy-in from all of the staff members. All right, let's get this thing rolling. All right, so some of the program priorities that we had when we built this whole thing. So the number one priority we had is we had to build a county team. And that team had to take into consideration of all of the players in the county, all the departments that this industry would touch. Those are the folks that we get together. Those are the folks that do the decision making and also the enforcement. We needed to put together a program. We needed to understand, well, what do our residents need? You know, what are their needs? That's the number one priority. What are the patients' needs out of this? Obviously, we needed to fulfill the needs of the departments, and then the cultivators, that was the last priority. So some of the opening considerations, this is really coming from criminal prosecution to civil prosecution. And what I mean by that is we used to arrest people for the production of cannabis or marijuana. Now really it's a civil prosecution matter. It's a fine structure. The penalties have really been stripped away so that law enforcement incentive is a lot less than it used to be. So number one, you need buy-in from your sheriff and your DA. You can't move a program forward in a good manner without the buy-in of those two. Still, this industry's been in the shadows for a long time, and what I mean by that is They have not had the benefit of regulation. Regulation, what that does is says, here's your standards, here's what you have to meet. So when you start regulating this industry, nobody's in compliance with anything because nobody's ever told them what they have to comply with. Not really their fault, really ours as regulators for not being there telling them how to do things. Still criminal based. So until we kind of roll this thing forward, you're going to have a criminal element involved here. You just have to understand that going in. Regulation cleans that away. It's a cash-based system. So let's say Del Norte County decides, hey, we're going to do this. Be prepared to take sums of money in the $100,000 range. You need a cash counting machine. You need a place to take that money. You need a security force to be able to secure the people coming in. So don't take the cash basis lightly. You really can't treat this industry like we treat our normal businesses. These aren't gas stations. These aren't regular stores. So when we set up a fine and fee structure for them, it needs to be at the level they're used to participating. $1,000 fine to these guys means nothing. So you need to have the fees and fines appropriate for this industry. The other thing we learned very rapidly, your residents are reluctant to complain. What tends to happen, they complain, nothing happens. You can solve that via regulation. So what were the impacts of adult use coming in? This was a huge impact for us. It allowed industrial hemp to the mix. If you don't want marijuana in your county or cannabis in your county, just allow industrial hemp because they cross-pollinate and ruin the crop. So if that's where you guys land, allow industrial hemp. There's no size limits as of 2023. That means mass scale's coming. The other thing is they allow vertical integration. Type 3 licenses, that's that mixed light at a half an acre, outdoor an acre. Those are the limits right now. All that tends to go away. This is the most troubling piece, really. It's not the commercial aspect of this industry. It's the next loophole that's been created for law enforcement. It's personal exemptions. It's indoor, 6 plants. You can't prohibit that. Everybody has the right to that. That's 18 to 24 pounds of production that every individual is allowed to do. That's your problem, not the commercial guys. So here's kind of our process. So what we did is we did a public outreach process. Again, residents and patients, followed by the cultivators. And this is just kind of the flow chart that we use. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the flow chart. You guys already have your process, which is a very good one. This right here, you probably see a lot of these. This is legal cover for the black market 99% of the time. This is a 99 plant count prescription. When we first started, these things were all over Yolo County. They had stacked prescriptions. These lead to massive grows that law enforcement will walk away from. They're legal, they have a prescription, you walk away. We've cleaned these out of Yolo County. You can no longer do this in Yolo County because we have a regulation in place. So even if you have one of these prescriptions, it's still 100 square feet or 6 plants. That's it. So at least we could clean that up. So these are what unregulated conditions look like. This is what you'll find in a banned state. So if you don't regulate it, you don't give your code enforcement, law enforcement tools, this becomes rampant. These are actual pictures as you see in Yolo County. This pit bull is tethered to the neighbor's fence. That's an alley. There is no restrictions of a kid walking down there and meeting that dog. And I can tell you, because I walked into this dog, he's pissed off because he has to sit in the sun all day and he's not happy. So here's another, this is what you end up with. So as I show you these pictures, think of what you need personnel-wise to regulate this. This is environmental health. This is building, this is planning, this is SO, this is animal control, this is ag. The marijuana is off to one side, but these are the conditions that you find out. In Yolo County, it's easy for us to spot because we're flat. But here you've got hills that protect and hide this stuff in the background that ends up in your watersheds. So the more sensitive your area is, the more forested and hilly it is, the higher cost your regulatory package will be because you have to have people that can make sure these folks are in compliance. They will comply, by the way, if you regulate them. This is the hotel. So this becomes a lifestyle. Those beds are occupied by people. They actually live in these conditions and don't think anything of it. So here's more of it. The neighbor, you would think on the other side, he would complain about it. He's not going to complain. He's doing the same thing. So here's what a personal grow looks like that's a little too large. It's above its 6 plants. It's above the 100 square feet, but much cleaner. So as you start to regulate, you can clean things up. This is an indoor grow. And the key on these is the building officials and the building code. Most of these have been installed without compliance to the electrical code, so you got to count the lights and put the appropriate loads in. They're heavy electric users, easy to figure out who's doing what. The other thing they tend to put in here is CO2 augmentation, so you really have to have a hazmat specialist to be able to go into these rooms and make sure it's safe for your employees. Charcoal filtration, you would never know this grow is next door to you in a warehouse because you won't smell anything on the outside because they're pretty sophisticated. What you don't want is residential structures converted to this. You don't want house grows. So now I'm going to roll into what kind of legal grows look like. They're signed. They're very clean. They have nice fences around them. They have nice structures. All the tanks that you see are water tanks. They're not hooked up to the local supply. They fill the tanks. They mix fertilizer in the tanks. Nice clean area. So you can see the hoop house structures. There's your cannabis growing in it. Interesting enough, these hoop houses, while they're clean, they're not legal because they weren't built up to building code. They, as part of the process, you get to do code enforcement. They have to comply with everything that you as a county want them to comply with, or they don't qualify for a state license. So you have all the cards. So these hoop houses are all going to be replaced with commercial hoop houses in 2018. So here's kind of what happens for us as a task force. So when we get a complaint, the task force meets, and the first thing is the sheriff goes out to clear the facility. We bring in animal control, and these are on complaint grows. Hazmat comes in next, clears it for everybody that's involved. Then we have a whole team of all of our different players, all the different departments that do independent inspections. The district attorney then collects all those reports. The client works with each independent department to make sure they're in compliance. District attorney does the settlement agreements and recovers all the costs. That's for a non-compliant grow or one that would be a complaint grow. So here's our team. This is our first legal facility. It's indoor. It actually has a mixed light facility outside and outdoor. It'll be in conflict with the state, but this is how our growers tend to grow. They have all three. It has a charcoal filtration, has all the lighting. For us, this is a plant tag. So we do track and trace. We pushed all of our growers into track and trace before it was out mandated by the state. We also do pesticide testing. We test for heavy metals, and we test for microbiological contaminants. Every single grower, every single batch is tested so that we can guarantee if we're going to do this to our consumers that this product is safe for them to consume. So now here's our current org chart. So I run the ag department. The ag department's on one side of that equation, and the cannabis task force is on the other side. So if you look at all those FTEs over there, that's what it takes to run this program. So it takes a lot of labor, and you have to build that labor pool. We're still building people to come into this system. As you start, you beg and borrow from everybody, and we've gotten good compliance from all the different parties. So here's what we started with, and here's where we can start to get into the cost structure. This is the initial costs that we estimated. So it's a pretty costly program, and it just runs down our rough count, what we first thought, and our FTEs, and it just totals everything that we would need. For us in Yolo County, we weren't going to enter into this unless we could recover every bit of our costs. No general fund, and that's what we've done. No general fund has gone into this program. So then you kind of want to run down the numbers and say, well, how much is an acre worth in Yolo County? An outdoor growth, $2.2 million bucks. Greenhouse grown, $2.7 million is what the gross value is. So this won't last, by the way. This is what it is today. Once the state regulations come into place, you can expect this price structure to go down. We front-loaded our fees because we knew our compliance for code compliance was going to be really high. You're going to have them in the front end, and once you get them your clients under control, that's going to drop. So we front-loaded our fee structure. So how did we come up with the fees? We did some case studies. So what we did is we knew that we're going to go out, we're going to do some actual inspections. Our first one was about a half acre of THC. The cost, it took 16 employees, 20 hours, about $64,000 is the cost for one inspection. Doesn't include any of the follow-ups. So initially our proposed revenue was $1.75 for that 2,300 square feet, and then the initial fee of $7,500 would have been about $48,000. So roughly a fully licensed facility, about $48,000. That was our initial assumption. So here's case number 2. This is just 300 square feet. So it took 10 employees, 15 hours to do that 300 square foot non-compliant grow, about $30,000 in costs. So here's where you get a little bit out of balance. The smaller these are, the more costly, because you have the same number of employees and it takes quite a bit of time. And then if it was fully licensed, it would have been a $12,000. And the reason you back out employees, by the way, is when you're dealing with fully licensed facilities, you don't need the law enforcement component. And then here's case number 3. This was a non-compliant, just personal exempt grow. We initially proposed to put a registration fee on it. We didn't do it yet, but the non-compliant personal grows eat up a lot of time, and there's really not very much way to recover the costs on those. The last one was we caught somebody early. They were in close proximity to a church. It took 4 employees, 5 hours. It was about $4,000. No revenue for that because they never started. And this is where our fees are today. So these are the ones we just set. We actually broke it down because we were told by industry that they wanted a medical cannabis program, so we broke it down. And CBD dominant strains were $1.60 per square foot is where we ended up. The commercial cultivation application fee is $1,500, and I can tell you we messed up on that. It took way more time on the front end. We should have had a much higher fee. The hourly enforcement inspection fee ended up being $142 an hour. Initial permit fee, $7,600, and then $2.48 per square foot for THC. Now, while industry told us that they were all CBD, everybody was CBD, I can tell you today there's only 1 of 72 that are growing CBD. Everybody else is growing THC. So this is kind of the era of they're going to tell you what you want to hear, and then you're going to find out the truth when you go out there. And here's my budget summary. So my ag budget's $3 million. So that one half of the chart, $3 million. The Cannabis Task Force is 3.4. That's where we actually ended up when we budgeted for 17-18. It takes 72 clients and about 32 acres to generate the amount of revenue that you needed for this. So that's kind of the breakdown. That's kind of where we're at today. So we kind of went through some estimates. We're still getting a handle on all of our cost structure, still trying to put everything into place. You need a lot of equipment. You need GIS mapping. You need GIS specialists. There's a lot to this. Our sheriff does flyovers with the aero squad, so we've had to purchase cameras for the airplane equipment. And what you want to do is draw a distinction between what's legal and what's illegal. And you need to be able to communicate that, because the illegal ones still fall under the sheriff's department, even though we do all the rest of the code enforcement stuff with them. So it's a partnership. And that is it. Very quick. I wanted to leave a lot of time for questions. We've covered a lot of ground. We still learn stuff every single day. My advice is, if you decide to do this, scale it, pick a number. We initially opened this thing up and thought, oh, well, we'll just put in an interim ordinance, and that's what we did, but we didn't cap the numbers, and we had a land rush. Good thing for people trying to sell property, not so good for people that are trying to buy property. The properties were trading for $300,000 to $400,000 over market value. That's how quick this thing will flip around. So we're very careful in what we do now. We currently have a prohibition in place, so we have about 72 clients right now, possibly up to 100. We require them to have a water board permit before they even come to us. That solves a few of the water issues for us. But anyway, I want you guys to ask questions.
Thank you very much, John. That's extremely informative. It was good to see a lot of new numbers in your presentation from 6 months ago. I'd like to kick off the discussion with questions from the supervisor first, and then we're definitely going to have some exchange with the public also.
Perfect.
Because they'll probably have some questions. Kicking off my piece, I want to back up to some of your initial comments around medical versus recreational and the decision-making process. You kind of led us to believe it was a law enforcement-based potential decision there. Can you kind of go over that in some more detail?
So we have this task force or stakeholder group that's together, and what we do is we make recommendations to the board with where we want to go is kind of the departments. If we can't come to a decision point, we feel it's not appropriate for us to make a recommendation to the board. So law enforcement, DA, and sheriff, and I can tell you myself, I'm not in agreement with adult use. I'm good with medical. Adult use is a totally different thing. I think it's the wrong decision. So we have other folks that are on our task force that are on the opposite scale. They believe we should have adult use, but because staff couldn't come together in a consensus decision-making manner, that we decided that it's better not to put it on the table. Because if we can't agree, it just creates more confusion for the community, and it's not good policy to recommend to the board a split decision.
So did that direction come from your board, basically saying staff of the county get together with the I mean, how?
We developed that. So what we did is
You led it?
We led it, yes. What we recognize is there's no one individual that knows everything they need to know about this industry. Everybody's their own expert within the county, and we needed all those minds together to be able to recommend the appropriate policy for the county. So it kind of happened organically.
But still, the Ag Commission,
Yes.
at least in Yola, was the one that
Correct.
got the troops together from the county departments.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Questions from the board?
John, what would you think is the biggest mistake you've made so far?
I can tell you it's opening it up without capping the numbers. That's the biggest mistake we made. What we should have done is we should have had an idea of numbers, 50, 20, whatever that number was, and started there. Because and it's interesting is every single meeting with the policy direction, people would run with it, even though it's not factual. Because we didn't put a number on it, meant we were going to open it up for everybody, for everything, as many as would want to come. And that was the wrong message to send. So be very intentional about your messaging, especially at the policy level. Because even if it's not where you intend to go, you're going to create a whole tidal wave of people that think that's the direction. There is a lot of speculation in this, like the real estate game. You'll have realtors that are going to buy property in anticipation, and the prices just go up for folks. So be very, very intentional in your conversations. That's the biggest mistake we made. We didn't cap things.
Please, Supervisor.
Yeah, John, I was curious on your staffing chart. It looked like a lot of people there. I mean, that's a fairly big department. That
It
would
is.
be a relatively large department. How many people were those people, all those people that you had to add, or did you start out with some people that you already had that you used in spots? What was the number of people that you added to the staffing?
So we've probably added to that staffing chart. The sheriff wanted 2 additional deputies, so there's probably about 7 or 8 people that got added. See, what you do is when you start, you stress out your departments, you borrow folks to get it running, fully intending that you need to backfill them eventually, and that's kind of what we did. We borrowed people, and then we pushed as hard as we could, and now we're to the point where we have to backfill. So almost that staffing chart, those are going to be all backfills, because you're going to need. There's not in every county. There's not a lot of excess capacity. It's you can do it for a little while, and then you have to backfill it. So it's a whole new division. That's why I wanted to show my org chart. Basically, I just doubled in size.
Supervisor.
Well, John, thanks for coming all the way to Delaware County. I appreciate it. And I also appreciated your position that you came in stating that you are not one of those 57% who voted for the Adult Use Marijuana Act. You're part of that 43%. So I have a series of questions. Let me start with, what else do you grow in Yolo County? What other crops are there?
Our number one crop is tomatoes.
Okay.
We grow tomatoes, we grow corn, and I'll pronounce it almonds. We pronounce it almonds in Yolo County.
Almonds.
Walnuts. We are very diverse. Rice, we're a big rice county. We have a big land base. That's the difference as well. I know you guys have lilies here. That's one of your greenhouse products grown here. And again, intentional in your conversation, because Monterey's example is those greenhouses that were vegetables converted to marijuana because they didn't control that. You don't want to lose your lilies and replace it with cannabis.
Well, this was my question to our state senator, Mike McGuire, who I shared that exact scenario with him about folks who want to come up and see the wine country. Big tourism business. People come up from Southern California, across the country, want to go into Napa, Sonoma, Mendocino valleys and taste wine and go from this. And what would prevent those vintners from changing their crops, just like in Yolo County, to a more profitable basis, which would marijuana grows? What would prevent that? They're going to go, farmers, people in agriculture are going to go where the money is. Now, I appreciate the fact there's a long tradition of people coming up and tasting wine and going that, and it's socially acceptable. I have a lot of concerns about and opening the door to this product in Del Norte County, because you will see some unintended consequences. I also just want to ask the question, I heard you say that you have a $3 million general agricultural budget. Was that correct?
That's correct.
Essentially, you've doubled it, with another $3 million, more so than that, for cannabis alone.
Correct.
Which translates into additional deputies and additional code enforcement personnel. And then you will hope that you can deal with the existing, as if I borrow your words, the existing criminal element already existing, and root them out through regulation. That's what I heard you say. Is that that's correct? So we all know that government sometimes does things and they try hard and then it doesn't work and then the market takes over. What's going to prevent that $3 million cannabis budget from even going higher? And because you don't have the proper personnel to really deal with an explosion of a product, which tomato and almond growers, I said that right, and all those other folks are saying, well, this is a profitable venture for us. We can suddenly become prosperous. I have reservations about moving in this direction, entering the door, opening the door, and bringing this problematic product into Del Norte County. Am I wrong? Am I off base?
So the first question is, my guess is it's already here. You already have a big industry here. I know you already have border trafficking that comes across because Oregon allows it. If you probably look at weedmapper.com, you'll see how many deliveries are into Crescent City. So the real question is, and what you'll find here is everybody thinks it's going to be conversion. Your traditional farmers, because of the federal requirements and the banking requirements, they don't come near this thing. The other piece is you as the county control where it is. You could literally say, I want to try this out. I'm going to allow 10 acres and it's going to be right here and no place else. You can do that. So it's really about the rules and what's right for your community. It doesn't have to go everywhere. It doesn't have to go where your lilies are. It doesn't even have to go in the timber area. You can choose where you want it to be. And for us, that 3.4 million, 6 million, whatever it happens to be, if it goes higher, this industry pays. No general fund. Now, for us, one big advantage, we've been starved for code enforcement officers. We haven't had code enforcement in Yolo County until now. We've had zero, no code enforcement officers. So we just brought a new benefit to the county. Our rural deputies, we've struggled to have a presence in the rural environment. We're adding 2 deputies that can then patrol those areas. So there's a lot of benefits if you do it in a very, very controlled manner, but your way. It has to be your way, it just doesn't work.
Supervisor?
Well, John, thanks for coming, and I think you just answered my question. I was trying to, going to say what you just said, that my understanding was everything in your budget was being balanced and paid for, that nothing was coming out of your general budget. So The 100 square feet, 6 plants. You were saying you'd keep to that, which I like. So, but you were also saying it can get out of hand, or they go beyond that. So what's happening there?
So here's the challenge, and this is just our experience. So everybody's going to have their own experience. So everybody thinks the commercial folks are going to be the problem for the kids and diversion. It's not commercial. They want their license. They're going to do everything you ask them to do. It is the personal exempt grows, and in Yolo County, any grow that's within proximity to a school, you could just map the pathway from the high school to these grows. We shut down a number of them that were personal exempt grows. That's what you have to control. It's the personal folks. Guess what? That's not fee associated. That's where you want your tax. It's the social consequences of legalization. California just landed this thing on us, and we now have to deal with it. That's the other piece. Is we're in the process of adding a tax measure to our fee structure, so it's not the end of the road for us. We're going to add a tax measure to that fee structure to pay for the social consequences. Ideally, if I had my way, every single one of those would be registered and mapped, that we could give it to our local law enforcement so you know where they all are.
So we could do that?
You absolutely can.
Okay. And then you originally said your fee, you didn't think you were high enough on your fee. So how would you, what would you change about that?
What I would change is the initial registration fee should be around 10 grand.
Okay.
It's the fee that's going to need to be put in place for you to do a complete review by all of your departments. And our review includes the DA and the Sheriff's Department. They're looking at backgrounds. We do background checks too. So we didn't wait for the state. We're already doing background checks of everybody that's associated with these grows. So we know who the players are. So that's the component that you really need to put in place.
And you were at 75, was that what I saw?
Yeah.
Okay, but you'd go up to 10. Something else that just totally went out of my head, so
You just generated a ton of questions from me. So if you remember it, Supervisor, please chime in. I want to jump off initially on what Supervisor Cowan was alluding to in your conversation with these personal grows and this main line from the high school to these personal. What we haven't discussed this personal exemption much here. We've just really landed around commercial and medical. Talk to us something about these personal exemptions. What can we do? What can't we do?
So you are really stuck because people have the right via the ballot initiative to have 6 plants. You can force it indoors. You can say indoor. That's about all you can do. Other than you can register them, that you can have a fee associated. Now here's where you're going to have county council because it says reasonable regulation. So nobody has figured out what reasonable regulation is around this. I know one is either a city or a county put a $400 fee in place and were immediately sued for unreasonable regulation. So there'll be a few test cases, but what we did in Yolo County is we pushed it all indoor. We didn't allow outdoor. Outdoor in somebody's backyard with 6 plants. These things can be 15 by 15. Okay, so they're monstrous plants. The skunk smell to your neighbors is horrendous. So unless you're on a rural property, you want it indoors.
Okay. That's
can I
absolutely, please.
go off that smell? Because this has come up before, and I know there some of the growers who are in this room, we've discussed that there's ways of stopping that. So by forcing them indoors or suggesting indoors, we can also control the smell aspect of it by the equipment they're using.
Absolutely.
Is that correct? What about, has anybody tried, because we've talked about the plant size, you know, you can have 6 plants or you can have 6 plants. Has anybody ever tried to regulate the size of the plants?
So medically, you could restrict down to 100 square feet.
Okay.
But now it got messy when you did adult use and you allowed 6 plants. We went from what we could regulate, because that regulates the plants,
Can you
right?
go in airspace? Do you know what I'm saying?
I think the personal exempt piece, you get to be a little bit on shaky ground because the initiative said 6 plants. It didn't give a size. I think you're on shaky ground legally, but I'll have to defer to council on those.
My other question that I did forget but came back. I mean, California's already putting taxes on them. I think come around 25%. So when you're talking, you're saying you're going to come into more taxes. What are you guys thinking, 5%, another 10%?
No, what we're thinking is, and we're going to work with industry on this, so here's where you're in the process of developing an ordinance, right, regulation. Sonoma County probably has the best example with how to do that. You go ahead and you develop your ordinance, but it's not valid until your tax measure passes. So, no tax measure, no ordinance. I would say we're going to work on that too. We had an interim ordinance because for Yolo County, it was important for us to understand the industry. Until you start regulating this industry, you have no idea what they're doing. So there's a lot of labor involved. There's a whole bunch of things that was important for Yolo County to understand to inform our ordinance. But the tax measure, my suggestion would be you link the two together. We'll pass the ordinance, but it only is valid if the tax measure passes on the ballot, because you have to have funding.
So again, where are you
5% is where we'd land.
5% you're thinking,
So
okay.
fees plus taxes wouldn't exceed 10%.
Okay. One more question, and this is kind of going way out there, but we were in Humboldt a few weeks ago, and it was very informative, but I think the one thing that keeps coming back to my mind was the edibles. Those scare me. The edibles. I mean, I walk into Safeway, and there's a piece of cake, and it's about this big. And you can buy them individually and you can eat it. And you walk in with their edibles, same size piece of cake, but it's 15 dosages. It's something that you would think was a normal size cake was actually for 15 people. And how do we avoid that being here? How do we regulate that with kids?
You create your own authority. So we learned from Colorado what they needed to do is they created their own authority. So it was the city of Denver. So talking about edibles, Sonoma County created their own authority, and they do it through the public health officer. That's part of our task force as well. So you have to have what your public health officer would expect and meet their needs. Mm-hmm. So absolutely, you can control all of that. Sonoma County did a good job. You would think that would have been the more controversial portion of their ordinance. That was a no big deal. The more controversial was extracting it from rural residential. And if you do, I take it you guys have rural residential zones where you have outside the city houses in close proximity, extracted out of those zones. It's very problematic in those areas. So we will be doing that as well. Buffering, there's a lot of things to consider, especially for the smell, traffic patterns. Commercial operations have a lot of traffic. 1 acre grow can have up to 50 employees is coming in to do trimming. So
with the authority, and getting back to Supervisor Cowan's question specific to edibles, with that authority, could you specify labeling?
You absolutely
dosages,
can.
all that? Okay. Because we had an incident at the high school last year where 8 kids had one of those cakes, and they couldn't even pick them up off the floor. Mm-hmm. And had to get them over to the hospital. And that kind of thing scares the heck out of me, but it made sense once we had the conversation in Humboldt why that took place, is because you're presumably supposed to know your dosage.
Right.
But
it's very complex.
Kids don't know their dosages.
So the complexity there is the THC levels vary. And unless you're going to control the manufacturing process, you don't even know if that THC is appropriately mixed up in that brownie. So that's where your kind of health department comes in.
Sure.
And and you're going to have to create your own here because Sacramento's a long ways away from Del Norte County. So your expertise is going to have to be in-house.
And what do you mean by that?
So I can rely on the state because I'm right next door.
Sure.
For their expertise to be able to run stuff by them, have them come visit and look. This far north, it's a little more difficult. So you almost have to develop that expertise right here. But again, it's all fee-based, so if you need an expert in the edibles with what should be done, you just hire them.
So right now, and this is getting back to medical, right now I believe under 215 Del Norte County, we're legal up to 99 plants, is that correct? 96 plants?
No.
99. The you said you've taken that now off the table and rolled them into the new
Correct,
ordinance.
commercial.
Okay, so explain that to me. How are you rolling? The county just basically says, we're taking this 215 card or whatever license away, and you're going to now roll into this
So-
medical program under our
Correct.
ordinance?
So what we did is we created an ordinance, and we specified that for personal use, you get 100 square feet. That's it. Doesn't matter what your script card says, 99 plants, great. If you can stack 99 plants into 100 square feet, you're good. And everybody else is commercial. We don't allow caretaker exemption either, so that's the other piece. So we tried to, the caretaker exemption, I think it was, you could grow for 6 other people. We don't allow that in Yolo County. We consider that commercial. So we made a distinction between individual, personal, medical, and commercial medical. So we did that within our ordinance. So that's how we cleaned that up. Those that were legitimately commercial medically, they had collectives, they're the ones that came in and got licenses.
How many did you not have that were the other way?
I can tell you right now in Yolo County, we have that 70 some odd that are licensed.
Yep.
We have about 800 illegal grows that we still have to deal with.
800?
800. And I would be willing to bet that you probably have the same.
Well, Trinity County was saying, they were guessing they had 35, and they were giving out 500 licenses. I think that's what Judy was saying.
So here's the challenge with the licensing thing. What you're going to find is that you've got people that they're not cannabis growers, they're speculators. So they're going to run down and they're going to get a license. They don't know what they're doing. And you'll rapidly figure that out when you go to inspect them. That's what you'll find. So the number of people coming in for license doesn't necessarily reflect what you have in a county. You'll have people come from Florida to get a license if you were to open the door to that extent. So you have to be a little bit careful on that license piece.
So with regulations, and maybe this is more towards legal or county council, can we say they have to be a resident?
We tried that. It's not constitutional.
Interesting.
So that's one of the things. There's constitutional rights of property owners that we have to make sure we don't trample on.
Can you distinguish between a non-resident and a resident for your fee?
I'll defer to county council on that. You may be pushing the envelope.
Yeah, I mean, I think once we have more direction from where the board wants to go, we can, deal with some of these specifics. There's a lot through the County Council Association as to what other counties have tried in terms of what's a reasonable restriction, what has been tried and failed in the courts, what things go through, and so there definitely is area for reasonable restriction. And I think Joel Campbell-Blair, who he's our deputy, who's out on vacation today, but he did talk about what might be some of the reasonable restrictions and things that might not be. So I think once we know a little bit more about the direction the board wants to go, those are the things we can start proposing and listing off, and the board can let us know yes or no.
Supervisor?
John, you mentioned resident, non-resident, unconstitutional. What about foreign national? Someone from another country wants to come in and land speculate in Del Norte County.
So let me ask if somebody from another country can come in and buy a gas station.
Of course, the answer is yes. But can they come in and buy land to cultivate and distribute marijuana?
So
The answer
again,
is I'm hearing yes. It's problematic.
and it's a perception issue, so it becomes, that's where we rely on council to tell us what we want as policymakers, and then what we can legally do. So a lot of those questions become legal issues. But the last thing you want to do is put together an ordinance and just immediately get sued. See, and I think being very careful and deliberate and having these kind of conversations keeps you out of the places, the gray areas that get you in trouble. At the end of the day, if this is something that the board wants to happen, then we need, your staff needs to do it in a manner in which is safe for everybody, and you don't spend a bunch of money on lawsuits.
Very good. We'll bring it back to the board for further questions, but I'd like to turn it over for public comment at this
All right.
time. John, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Public comment, I saw a bunch of hands going up into the audience. Please approach the dais, state your name for the record, and there'll be a little clock ticking over here for a 3-minute period. But I'll remind you if you go over.
Hi, guys.
Good afternoon.
My name is Thomas Lopfine, and I'd like to thank this gentleman here for the hyperbole that he's raised,
Is his mic on,
Hyperbole.
Kylie?
that he has
Okay.
raised. A lot of the issues are non-issues. A lot of these people are very responsible. If they say 6 plants, they'll keep it at 6 plants. My personal experience, when I talk to people high up in the government, they came to my house and they said, we are going to legalize marijuana. What do you think? Well, I thought for a minute and I said, well, I think that it's one person, one vote, what makes America great, greater than any nation there is. And if the people voted in, we'll leave them alone, if they stay in the spirit of the law. Spirit of the law meaning responsibility about, how many they have, responsibility of where they have it, not next to schools and all that stuff. I said, if they don't stay in the spirit of the law, cut their head off. And the guy had a real wiry smile. He went, that sounds like it might work. So that's what I would probably suggest you guys might follow. If it says 6 or it says 10 and they have 50 plants, well, we know that's way out. I can't even smoke that much. And I smoke this medical marijuana for my back and for various other reasons, so I don't have to take pills that ruin my liver, all that kind of stuff, And also, let's talk about the medical aspects of marijuana. Do you know that it's the #1 anti-cancer ingredient that we have on the market right now? Nobody even knows that. Cancer cells run from THC in the blood. So it kind of looks like this under a microscope. Here's a cancer cell. Here comes THC. This cancer cell recognizes the danger and it tries to move. This thing overtakes it and kills that cell. Proven fact. So are you going to tell people that, well, we know better. We're not going to allow medical marijuana in case you're worried about cancer, which in my case I am, because of the reasons that you might have had in the letter that I left for all you guys. All right, good. So, it's basically responsibility. You hold people to an honor value system. And I think that, I'm pretty sure that the people that are in here that do smoke medical marijuana will, stay in the spirit of the law. I would hope that's what they would do, because if it was me, I'd just take their, put them in jail if they don't. Real simple. So it's either or. But you can't tell people, especially 50% of the people that vote, 57% according to you guys, but I think it's more like 70% because of the people that don't vote out there but do use, that, they can't do this because we're this or we know better, or I don't think so.
Thank you.
So anyway,
Appreciate your comments.
yeah,
And thanks for writing to us also.
yeah. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, guys.
You're welcome. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Chelsea Byer. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. With all due respect, I believe you've selected the wrong expert to consult on this issue. Yolo County could not really be more different from Del Norte County in regards to their agriculture. Supervisor Gitlin, you asked about what crops they grow in Yolo County, and I did a little research into this. The annual gross receipts from all agricultural products in Yolo County are over $300 million annually. They make over $69 million annually on their wine sales alone. The combined gross revenue for Del Norte County agricultural products is $68 million. So they make over $1 million more per year on their wine sales alone than we make from our lily bulbs, dairy, cattle, greens, veggies, everything. So it's really ludicrous to compare this county that makes, you know, so much money, and for us to say no to the tax revenue, permitting fees, and the grant funding available from Prop 64 for counties and cities that allow marijuana businesses, especially from a county that's always complaining that they're hurting for funds. I'm not a grower. I want everyone to know that, but I do know a lot of growers, and I'm here speaking on behalf of them, as well as I'm speaking on behalf of young people in Del Norte County that see positive aspects to this county. We want to stay here, but we're very concerned about the future of the county. This is an opportunity for young entrepreneurs to come here and grow an agricultural product. We all know that logging, fishing, gold mining, you know, all these things that sustain the county, they're not going to last forever, and we need new revenue, new opportunities. Obviously, tourism is a huge part, and our natural resources are our biggest resource here. And all the growers that I know they're growing beyond organic. They're not here to destroy the environment. They care very much about the environment. They have young families. That's why they're not here representing themselves. They're literally scared that if you decide to outlaw what they're doing to support themselves, that they're putting themselves at risk by speaking to you about this. So, you know, so many people are afraid to even come forward and talk to you. That's why I'm doing this. Finally, Chris Howard, your employer has come out and publicly spoken against cannabis in the industry, and I really think that, you know, that needs to be taken into account. Your vote is kind of bought and paid for, and it's a conflict of interest.
My district then.
Looks like my time is up. Thank you.
That's okay. Appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Absolutely.
You respond? Chelsea, would you come on back? More questions bring on more questions. I have concern about this product, and no one, I see some of the people in the room are certainly not afraid to come up and let me know how they feel about it. So I would dispute that. This is a very open discussion on whether this product is in the best interest of Del Norte County long term. So I would like your opinion on how you see this thing folding out. Del Norte County, small population of 27,000. Where is this going to go if we introduce this product to cultivate it and distribute it, irrespective of the fact we're a border state, and yes, it is legal here and probably going to be and very healthy industry in Humboldt. Where do you think that puts Del Norte County if we reject this and move into this is not a place that you can grow and distribute? Do you think we're going to stay down economically and not prosper because we're no longer a marijuana county, we're not sanctioning it? Give me your opinion. I'd be interested to hear your opinion on how you see this thing 5-10 years from now.
Sure. Well, here's the thing. We've been sandwiched between the largest cannabis growing regions of California and Oregon for decades. So if we were going to become a cannabis haven, it would have already happened by now. But the thing is, we're not. Del Norte County has over 70% firmly protected public land, unlike Humboldt County, which has all these postage stamp parcels cut out where private landowners can come in and create all these environmentally destructive grows. That's not going to happen in Del Norte County. If you're concerned about a rush of people coming up here, like some green rush type situation, you know, maybe consider a moratorium on current growers. People who are already operating, just let them continue to have their livelihood and their business. Set your limit for how many permits you're going to give, and that way you'll, you know, keep the business small. But, you know, the thing is, there's just not that much opportunity here for cannabis growers. There's so much public land, and the places where they can do it, you know, just aren't that prevalent. So in terms of the future of Del Norte County, if you allow this or don't allow it, I mean, you know, Yolo County has a reputation in this, in California. They made the LA Times for, have you seen this article about them? about a legal grow that was busted by 30 officers at gunpoint, you know, children in the house. It was pretty horrific, so much so that the LA Times wrote a story about it because these growers were totally compliant with California state law. But, so I don't want to see that kind of thing happen in Del Norte County, and the growers I know have told me that regardless of what you do, they're going to keep growing. You're not going to chase them out of the county. They're eager to comply. They're eager to pay you their permitting fees and, you know, all of the things that you're asking, but they're not going to go away. So the future of Del Norte County could be very bright in terms of what we're, you know, the young people coming up in this county, to give them another option in terms of what they can do for a living. And I'm not just talking about become a grower. The thing is, so many growers don't want to do this for the rest of their lives. They want to do a few seasons, get a little nest egg, and then start some other kind of business. Start a local cafe, start a coffee roastery, a chocolate bean company. I'm serious. You know, if you've been to these places like Nevada City, Mendocino, you know, these towns that are really vibrant and alive, they're built and sustained with cannabis money. They really are. And it can add just hundreds of thousands of dollars to our economy. It already does. And, you know, the growers I know, they love to eat at North Coast Grill. They, you know, they need construction equipment. They support local nurseries, Home Depot. You have to consider how much money they spend, and it's all benefiting, you know, our farmers markets. They buy Alexander eggs. I mean, they support our economy in so many little ways. So we really have to think about the big picture and not just like stomp our foot down and say, no, we're Del Norte, we don't want this. We have to be forward thinking.
So I just want to make a comment really quick about that, because that's what I keep hearing from everybody. It's going to bring all this money here, but you said it, Chelsea. 82% of our lands are federal lands, state lands. We don't have the area to do mass grows. So if we're in little sections and we don't have the area, where do you think all these big grows and all this money is coming from? You know, that's where you guys need to, you know, you keep talking.
It's okay, Jade. Please. Thanks.
Those are the questions that go through my head, because it's like talking out one side and then it's the other. I don't see, we don't have the huge farmlands like they do in Yolo County. You're right. We have very limited area that grows can happen.
Supervisor.
Yeah, Chelsea, since you're the spokesperson for the group, I'm curious. You said we brought the wrong presenter, and give me your reasoning. Do you think the fee structure is wrong? What part of that do you think is not going to work in Del Norte County? I understand they've got a huge agricultural program in Yolo County, but besides that, do you think we're going to have to charge more fees because we are smaller? It's going to take more people. It's going to take more expertise. Do you think the fee structure is wrong? Do you think something that in his presentation is not going to work in Del Norte County?
Yeah, I just think the size of everything, you know, all of his numbers, they've got 10 times the population that we do here and less land. So the fact that they need 16 employees working 200 hours to examine one site, I mean, that just seems a little bit ludicrous to me. I've never done the inspection myself, but I think all of those facts and figures that he was giving you were just really blown out of proportion, and we can't really compare them to Del Norte County because we are so much smaller and so different. And to speak to what you were saying, Lori, you know, I know that we're not going to have this huge influx of growers, and I think that that is a positive thing, because so many of us don't want to see the destruction of our public lands. We don't want to see a huge change in our culture, an uptick in transients, the negative aspects that people associate with the industry. But irregardless of the lack of explosion of a growing economy, we're still, if we outlaw it, we're saying no to the potential dollars of all those permitting fees. I mean, I know that the Department of Fish and Wildlife is already anticipating in years 3 and 4 of cannabis regulation, what they're going to do with their excess fees, because once people have already come into compliance, they're going to have all this extra money they're anticipating, because only in the first 1 or 2 years do the growers need to come into compliance, and after that, they're still paying their fees every year, but you don't have to do as much because those limited number of growers are already in compliance.
Well, thank you, Chelsea. We welcome the exchange that take place. I believe, ma'am, we had an individual here first. Thank you.
I'm Robert, Del Norte County.
Hi, Robert.
Just to address the figures, of like, where's this money going to come from? We don't have much land. And that's just we hear, what was the valuation? $2.2 million per acre, 2.7 greenhouse, and that's not talking about indoor agriculture, It's a ridiculous amount of money, and it will go away. Eventually, it will be a pretty cheap product. I did bring you a little pot plant. This was grown indoors under ambient light for like 3 weeks. It doesn't do very well that way, And so it would probably be unreasonable to tell the poorest people in the state that they would have to grow inside where the sun doesn't shine. So we know how Blake Alexander feels. We know his family and his neighbors feel about greenhouses of cannabis infringing upon clouds of cattle feces. We know less about how 2/5 of you feel, our leaders. I looked into Yolo County and its ordinance, and I wanted to address other things, like, are we talking about the kids, we got to save the kids, we have facts that can, mitigate that, but I don't know where we're at. We don't know where you guys really are at with an ordinance. So as far as Yolo County's ordinance is concerned, I would be worried about the continued prejudice that occurs when we tell someone that they cannot plant a sun-loving creature outside. We grew these things inside only because we were rebels. We're enemy of the state. We didn't really start doing that, for fun. Yolo County forbids medical gardens within 75 feet of a neighboring structure, which would effectively ban a garden in your backyard throughout all of town, Yolo County requires a permission slip for renters, hearkening to standards of the past that liberty is intended by this nation only goes to certain qualified property owners. If we are not also serving property management issues for private property owners when it comes to issues such as pet deposits and interior paint colors, do we do so to cannabis users because of their status as a lesser class of people? It is not the place of a very small community to challenge the state and their voters to determine the legal meaning of reasonable. We don't have the means to figure out what reasonable is. Someone's going to have to do that for us. Of course, it is unreasonable to tell poor people they need to go buy expensive lighting and electricity when the standard for agriculture for everyone else is the sun. I grow inside and I can afford it, but most people in this community couldn't afford to buy a light and pay for the electricity. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, Yolo County requires commercial fees totaling about 10 grand, in addition to fees imposed by the State and Water Control Board. And they want 10 grand if you're over 10,000 square feet, the Water Control Board, So this is going to create an unreasonable barrier, to the entry of the marketplace for the people. You guys serve the poor people that can't afford to live. So back to the children and the safety of our community. While law enforcement unions will stop shop numbers to present information in a false context to meet their demands of science, the University of Texas Austin published findings in the American Journal of Public Health reflecting on federal traffic data to find no correlation with cannabis access and road safety. In a study published in the same journal 1 year earlier, researchers found a reduced association with fatalities, particularly among drivers aged 25 to 44. The Journal of the American Academy of Child Adolescent Psychiatry found adverse impacts from cannabis exposure among youth to have declined by 24% between the years of 2002 and 2013, alongside a general decline in youth use. And while I do notice that the attitude and opinions of law enforcement and their unions, I also prize data from scholarly sources. There is a time to ask law enforcement to weigh in on issues, and a time for law enforcement to weigh in for cannabis has long come and gone. And I hope you guys keep an open mind. Sorry my time's up.
No worries.
Have a good one.
Thank you. Please. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Charles Crawford, and I am a resident here in Delaware County. I'm also a medical marijuana patient. I have multiple sclerosis. With my illness, I'm very sick, and it requires a lot of that medicine for me, and I am now purchasing it, and it's very expensive. I'm on a fixed income. I receive SSI. I'm unable to work, seeing how I'm disabled. The ability to grow my own medicine in my backyard is everything to me. I need to have that, and I can't have that taken away. What this sounded to me like was a very sophisticated system of control and regulation, which is very expensive and creates jobs for law enforcement and code enforcement and everything, and that's all great, but it pushes the individual grower like myself who's trying to grow his own medicine in his backyard and can't do it indoors, like Robert was saying, forces us out of the picture and forces us to go to the commercial growers, which is where the real money is, and which is what the control is really there for, because there is a lot of money in the commercial grows, which I'm really not for in this county. I just want to make sure that my rights are protected and that I can grow those 6 plants in my backyard, because I desperately need that medicine. And I can't have a system of regulation holding me back and forcing me out of the picture because I can't afford to pay for all the permits and fees and all of this stuff. You know, to be a part of that system that is just sounds like it's a lot of money spent for control and regulation, and like I said, that's a lot of jobs for them, and that's great, but it sounds to me like it does not have my interest in mind, and is really about those commercial grows and getting control so that the money can be seized there and made there off of where the money really is, which is those commercial grows. Those people are the ones that are making all the money. I'm not about making money. I'm about making sure that I can have the medicine that I need. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair,
Just
can I respond,
please.
Mr. Crawford?
Yes.
Mr. Crawford, existing state law, this Board of Supervisors has no ability, no desire to change existing state law for you, Mr. Charles Crawford, to grow 6 plants. Now, the exact protocol of growing that, whether they're inside or not, I'm not sure whether they're outside or not, but I also heard you say you do not favor the commercialization of this product in Delaware County. Did I hear you say that correctly?
Yes.
But you want to protect your rights
Yes.
to grow your 6 plants for medical marijuana purposes.
Yes, sir.
I have been and continue to be in complete support of medical marijuana, in contrast 180 degrees to the commercialization of this product for folks like you. And I want to say that very clearly because you're the very postcard person who this is supposed to help. And you should have that right, but nothing is going to change by what this board does or doesn't do with regard to your 6 plants. And I would like clarification. In Delaware County, can you grow 6 plants outside for personal use as compared with what I heard? And I don't know that, perhaps County Council, or you can respond to that without yelling out, please, Robert, thank you. I'd like to find the clarification on the growing of the 6 plants for Mr. Crawford's edification.
Council, I don't know if you want to weigh in on that.
Yeah, so right now, we don't have we're in the process of creating those things, mostly for the sake of this discussion. Since Joel Campbell-Blair has been working on this, I'd like to, kind of defer and collect any questions. There's also possibly some new regulations coming down with the medical, and so if we need to do like a refresher, kind of where things are at with the law currently, a type of session, we can do that, but I would defer to that since it's been his project, and I haven't gone through all of this particular.
That is a question I'll ask again in the later time, the clarification of the 6, how we grow the 6 personal plants and what is illegal.
So
you.
I guess my question is, because I get Mr. Gitlin's kind of confused on this, but we are also talking about medical marijuana, and there will be some adjustments. So my question to you would be, if it, you don't, you keep saying that we're not discussing medical marijuana,
I'm
and
not
we
confused
are.
on it. I want
Supervisors.
So my question to you, Mr. Crawford, would be, I think my concern with outdoor grows is making sure that they're safe. You know, whether they're behind locked areas, that type of stuff. I mean, would you be against that, making sure that you are in your plants are in an area that are fenced and they're locked and they're secure, and you know, those are the kind of things that my concerns come up with outdoor grows. I don't want them, I can think of areas as a realtor that I walk around and plants are just growing in pots that all can see and grab, and that, I'm not okay with that.
I understand wanting to keep it, you know, I wouldn't want to plant my plants out in the front yard for anyone to walk by and just, you know, take what I'm working very hard to grow, you know, so I do keep them in my backyard where I do have it fenced in, and just as a grower myself, that's what you know, that's just smart, you know, and I'm being wise about that, and I'm not making it available to children or anyone just walking by. However, when it comes to thievery and things like that, you can do everything you can to prevent it, but I can tell you from experience that thieves are very resilient and they'll find a way, no matter how much you lock it away, and try to control that and regulate that. So it gets a little sketchy, and when you start trying to regulate those 6 plants, you know, outdoors. And sometimes they do get very big and they do stink, and you know, the neighbor might not like that, you know, but you know, I don't like what my neighbor's doing a lot too, but you know, I might keep that to myself, you know. It's, you know, he's got a legal right to do what he's doing over there, I got a legal right to do what I'm doing over here.
Excellent. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Crawford, for entertaining us. Please. We got you up here this time. Appreciate you waiting.
Okay, I'm Sandy Prince.
Nice to meet
I
you, Sandy.
do not smoke marijuana, but it was legalized in California, so that's what the people want. My daughter owns Leo's World, used to be Wild Bill's. Every single day in there, people come in and they want to buy marijuana. People from all over the country, from Canada, it's ridiculous. We are a tourist area. I don't think we're really an agricultural area. We have the lily fields in Smith River, but you know, there's redwood trees, there's the ocean, there's what, 70% government land. We really don't have Yolo County's area of commercial crops, okay? You were saying that there's a 25% tax from the state. Does that trickle down to the counties and the cities? You're going to get part of that. The state gets it all? I can't imagine that.
It's okay. Thank you.
Okay, I worked for the city of Crescent City for many years. I worked there when the prison came in. I worked there when Walmart came in. I worked when Ray's came in. I gave the business licenses. I did the culture center. I did the water billing and sewer. The city did a spot annexation of the prison. So when you drive into Crescent City, you see 8,000 people here. Well, about 4,000 is the people out there. They also did an MOU with the county when Walmart came in for water and sewer. I don't think actually sewer, maybe just water out there. There's different things because we need money in our county and our city. And we have no more logging, the fishing, we can't even, salmon is gone for 2 years or whatever, I don't know what they did with that. The crabbing has been terrible. People don't have an income. I don't smoke marijuana. I had never have smoked marijuana. But people want it, they voted for it. So you need to figure out how we can get some income, have everybody happy. People go to Brookings, they go right over that state line. I know everybody knows that, and people are going there all day long because that's what they want. We're losing that income for the county and for the city. Well, I guess this is the county, sorry. It's legalized. We need to have your laws for this county. I don't think you're going to see thousands of growers come here. I own property in Angels Camp, which is over in Calaveras County. I have 26 acres that my husband's family has had since 1860. It's agriculture. And I'm telling you, I could sell that property for so much money. We're not doing it. I mean, you know, it's our property. It's ridiculous there. We see that. I follow that quite closely. Here, there's really, I don't know, I don't think you can grow too much under the redwood trees. And you've got an ocean there. My time is up, but believe me, we could use the income, and I don't think it's going to be a big problem like Yolo County seems to have. Also, I don't see where his when he's got a 10 by, what did you say, 200 square feet or something?
100.
Well, you said 200 square feet with people, 10 people or 30 people to trying to figure that out. Well, that's $50,000 a person. That's pretty good income. I don't know if anybody here makes that, any of the account auditors or whatever. And actually, it would be only 100 square feet, not 200 square feet in your... I didn't like all his thing. I have had cancer, so I have a problem remembering things. Sorry, I had chemotherapy. But I didn't like his, it was really off, I thought. But anyway, that's all.
Thank you, Ms. Prince. Appreciate your comments. Public comment? Oops. Good afternoon.
Hello. Excuse me. Eric Enther, Gasky. I just want to start out by thanking Mr. Young for coming all this way up here. I think he gave a very well balanced idea to everybody here as to what Yolo County's been dealing with. I have had a operating collective here in the county since 2015. I've properly formed it through the state, followed all my P's and Q's, was being a caretaker for myself and my father and my mother. I have been, for the last 3 years, I've been a consultant for a number of companies in the states of Washington and Oregon, helping them draft regulations, helping them to work together with their county officials and local jurisdictions to get their entities off base and in compliance. I don't envy you guys at all. You're dealing with a very tough issue, and I think a lot of people are going to be surprised at how little of a profit margin there really is when the actual business starts to flow. We have a business in Washington that has applied and been given, they were the 9th licensed cultivating farm in the state of Washington, and they are barely making it. They are making it, they're completely organic and sustainable, but again, when the states start to issue these taxes, it really does start to hammer on the ability for these businesses to make money. With that being said, I am very willing to comply. I want guidance. I know everybody else. I want to thank Ms. Breyer, Chelsea, for standing up. I think she was eloquent in her speech. She's very well educated. She knows what she's talking about. I think that if our fees are too expensive, it's going to really hurt the ability for the businesses to get off and running. Most of us who have done it the right way are not dealing with a lot of cash. We don't have cash. I have not been a commercial producer. I formed the collective because I knew it was the right thing to do. It was the way to give the protection to me and my family on my property in Gasky in order to cultivate the amount of cannabis that is required for my family. I am willing to work. I would offer to the board any time or services that I can bring to the table. And I just want to thank you guys for getting us this far. I know there's a lot of pros and cons. There's people who have a lot of different varying views, even within the industry. But I just want to thank everyone who's been here every single time. I want to thank you guys for being diligent. I want to thank Mr. Berkowitz for having that super early in the morning meetings that I've not been able to come to. I look forward to the next meetings, and let's just keep chugging forward, because I think we're getting to the core problems of what the real issues are, and I think we can come up with a really good solution to this. So terrific. Thank you guys very much.
Before you sit down, you're the very person I have questions for, because of some of the conversation that Commissioner Young had brought forward, specific to moving from a 215 type process to a medical, potentially commercial. Do you see that in your future?
Absolutely. Whenever the ordinance is passed, I'm prepared with an executive summary and business plan to present to the county. We're just kind of waiting. We're waiting. I'm playing the waiting game. We're allowing the process in the county to move forward however we as a group and a community are willing to go. And whenever we do draft an ordinance, if we do draft an ordinance, I am absolutely willing. And I have intentions to go as large as we can. I have a very prime piece of property in the foothills of Gasky. It's a PO property. It has no neighbors. I have my water certificate in place, just kind of waiting for the next step.
Sure.
I can say from a business standpoint, as we get farther in to the waiting period for the state and the priority issuance of licenses, it becomes a little bit more problematic. But again, I mean, this is the game, and this is how it's going to be. So, but to answer your question, yes, absolutely.
Under your current dynamic with that 215
Yes.
piece and rolling in the I think a caretaker.
Yes. For
How
family.
many does that allow you plants?
I have 12 plants.
That's it.
That's it.
So you don't even take current advantage
I
of
don't
the
know.
county.
I formed the collective with the sole purpose of making sure that the family land that I cultivate on was protected under all the rights that the state was giving us. So when the state said you should form mutual benefit collectives, I formed a mutual benefit collective for the protection of the family and protection of myself, and also protection of the ability to cultivate the plants. So I have a card, my father has a card, my mother has a card, we all take care of the plants.
But you would potentially switch.
Oh, we would switch it immediately.
And then what, give me some numbers. We know these plants could get fairly large. If you had your wish in 3 to 5 years, what's the scale you're looking at?
Well, I mean, in 3 to 5 years, personally, from a business standpoint, I would prefer to have some recreational ordinances in place. I mean, right now, I know we're specifically dealing with medical, but I believe in my business outlook, where I would like to be, I would love to see some sort of recreational ordinances in place so that we can have recreational commercial cultivation in place. But if we're just dealing with medical, I would like to be at the 25,000 square foot canopy coverage, but I would like to do a mixed light, which would take place some greenhouse conversions. I haven't built any of these yet. I've been very diligent and very patient in pulling a permit because I know, like Mr. Young has said, things change on the fly. I've been part of this in 2 different states. And so I have greenhouses ready to go, but I don't want to build them yet because I have no direction from the county. So once we have direction, I would immediately start to pull permits and immediately start infrastructure improvements to the property to get it up and running. Again, investment is a very tough thing when you're dealing with and looking for some sort of outside investment, real money, real legitimate business investment. Without an ordinance in place from the county, it's been very difficult to look and get the help. So, I would hope that we're moving forward with some sort of, ordinance, and let's take that question up again at the end of October.
Thank you. Appreciate your.
Quick question. Do you have a water board permit right now from the state?
I currently have a water certification board for a tier 1.
How many, do we have any idea, Jay, how many people have those in our county?
No, you would have to get in touch with the Wally,
With the state.
the water control board, and get that idea.
25,000 square feet seems just pretty big.
Well, it is big, and
It's like, that scared me when you said that.
well, absolutely. Well, and that is based off of the state allowance. I mean, that would be the maximum for a tier 3, but I would be a mixed light, so there would be a combination of greenhouse and outdoor full-term plants. But again, if the county said, we want to max this out at 10,000 square feet, I would be happy with that also.
So when you say mixed lights,
Yes.
because Robert came up and he's saying, that was indoors. So you're talking, when you say mixed light, you're saying in your greenhouse
We're using a
versus
greenhouse.
outside
A mixed light
natural
is
sun.
exactly. A mixed light is the use of natural sunlight with a little bit of indoor lighting to help vegetative growth, because they're a photosensitive plant. They flower, go to maturity at a specific flowering time based off of light. It's okay. I mean, I'm learning too. We're all learning, and that's, I think, the greatest thing is that we've had a really open discussion here in this county, and I respect that because I've been to a couple different ones in other states and other counties, particularly in Josephine County. Right now I'm consulting for a farm who's trying to get a rec license in Josephine County, and there's contentious city council meetings. There's lawsuits being floated around all over the place, and Josephine County is nothing like we would want to see here in this county. It's off the hook, Wild West, where you've got 8-foot tall leaning fences. They lean into the highways. You've got, You know, I mean, pictures like Mr. Young had shown, I mean, those exist in Josephine County. But I have to say that I don't see that problem here in this county. Again, we do have 70% of our land mass is state, county, or a federal recreational area. But that does not mean that we don't have an existing industry here willing to comply. We have a sizable amount of people who have formed collectives, and we are waiting for guidance. I mean, it's unfortunate that some of our colleagues aren't willing to come up and speak at the podium. I wish they would. You know, I know it can be scary, it's really nerve-wracking, but I think they need to hear from you too, and you need to hear from them.
One more quick, we know what our taxes are from our states. What's Washington at?
Washington's at about 37%, and I think it's up almost to 40%. They tax off of cultivation area, so it's like $2.25 a square foot for cultivation, and it differs for indoor and outdoor. You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, definitely.
Public comment? Maybe. We'll see. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Jake Smith. I live in Smith River. And I've heard the conversation, and I wanted to make sure Mr. Young did do an absolutely excellent presentation. And I want to make sure that that's based on the medical marijuana cultivation. So you guys haven't even factored in the, I'm sorry, forgive me for looking at him while I talk, but you guys haven't factored in the commercial aspect of it yet in your data. Medical commercial, but not recreational commercial. So when you say adult use, that's recreational.
Jake, and we could, because the rest of the world can't hear us right now when you're speaking to John over there, we'll re-ask some of those questions, and maybe, John, you could write those down, because we do plan on bringing you back up to finish the conversation.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
No worries. Please, continue.
Okay, so a couple of things. The presentation was very good. I was here a month ago talking to you guys about my nightmare about a pit bull on a chain, and there it was, right there. So it just kind of brought it all home for me. So I have a handout that I gave to Kylie that you guys are welcome to use for your background information. I took about an hour and a half and went online and by each county in the state, and I looked at where they have either temporary or permanent bans on commercial marijuana cultivation and sales. So I can tell you that as of this date, and we still have 6 months to go before we have to have a final decision, as of this date, 22 out of the 58 counties in the state have either a temporary or a permanent ban on marijuana cultivation or sales. And your handout shows that. So as part of this, looking at this, it's kind of interesting. One of the counties that has a cultivation sales ban is Lake County. Lake County, I'm sure you'll agree, is a pretty heavy meth, maybe drug county. They've had problems there. They had a citizens referendum in Lake County, and by a 74% margin, they passed a ban on cultivation and sales in Lake County. So that really stuck with me. It's a mixed bag. It's rural and urban counties, a lot of rurals, but a lot of urbans. So Orange County, the city of Anaheim has a ban. San Diego and the unincorporated areas, they have a ban. It varies again, there's urban, rural, but it is impressive that we have this many counties that have already decided either a temporary or permanent ban on the cultivation or sales. So I hope when it comes time, you guys consider this and make the right decision. I do absolutely support the medical marijuana the gentleman talked about. I support that. Another story is that we lived in Sacramento for quite a few years in a residential tract area. I have a neighbor next door to me. We're talking about quarter-acre parcels. Our homes were on quarter-acre parcels. This is my next-door neighbor. Next to him was, at the time, an illegal marijuana grow outside the home. And he called me over one day and he said, "Jake, I can't come outside to barbecue in my backyard because the smell is so bad." And I went over there with him, and I stood in his backyard, and he was probably 50 feet away from the grow. And it was terrible. It was so pungent, you couldn't stand it. And he couldn't go out in his backyard, so the smell is bad. So with that, I thank you.
Jake, can I clarify something real quick?
Yes.
When you say medical, you're supporting the conversation for personal use associated with what Mr. Crawford said, or potential commercial medical as associated with what Mr. Enther from Gasky was saying?
Thank you, Supervisor, for clarifying that. What I support, the state law says the individuals can grow. I support that, and I think for a medical use, that's another good application. I support growing in your own home, or if you folks decide to grow it outside under certain conditions, I support that. I do not support commercial cultivation.
Under any circumstance,
No,
recreation or medical?
And let me add, you reminded me, so let me add that during my research, there's trends from these counties. They talked about why they put a ban on cultivation and sales. It's everything we've talked about today. The trends, black market crime, code enforcement, water concerns, environmental concerns, and outside investors. So it's everything we've talked about today.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Appreciate your time.
Sure, you bet.
Good afternoon, Judy.
Thanks, Jesse Davis, 3rd District, and thanks, John Young, great presentation. And I think a lot of these concerns I hear, regulation fixes a lot of these concerns in a lot of ways, like John talked about. And bans, lots of counties and municipalities have had bans. Crescent City has one. They're ready to lift it, I think, if the county wants to move forward. Yolo County had a ban just recently, on the way to a full-on regulation scheme. So all the counties, most of the counties that are regulating started with a ban. So that doesn't mean that, it doesn't really mean anything. It just means that that's where they had to go while they were figuring things out. I think the Smith River community is probably going to be okay. It's not really a hot cultivation area. It's a little too cold. I don't think you're going to see fences and pit bulls in the Smith River area, connected with growing really ever. And not everybody can grow. Supporting the personal right to grow for somebody who needs it, while at the same time condemning commercial production, is totally hypocritical. Not everybody can grow. Not everybody who needs it, who has multiple sclerosis, can grow their own cannabis. Where are you going to get it? So that's pretty simple to understand, I think. Medical only, I applaud YOLO for going that way. One thing that John didn't point out was there's an incentivization for CBD dominant strains. That's the first county ordinance I've seen, and I thought maybe that Delaware could be the first to have an ordinance like that. But so that's cool. That's really an important direction to go. CBD dominant varieties are largely where the real medicine is coming from. THC is a part of that, but it's not as effective without the CBD component. So that's good to see it incentivized. It's not incentivized very much, but I think in the future, we'll figure out ways to truly incentivize the right kind of production. And Yolo County is probably a terrible example for Delaware, just because Yolo is huge. 1 acre, we could have 1 acre grows, just because we are 70, 80%. I don't care if 99% of the land is public owned. The other 1% is enough to grow billions of dollars in cannabis. So that's the land limitation is not an issue. Let's be clear, okay? We don't have a lot of space. There's not going to be huge. I mean, even Humboldt, there's tons of land. But there's not like there's grows on all of it. It's not sustainable. We could grow as much as we want here, So that's where we have the control, and the best way to control it is with a small scale ordinance. Not by capping the number of licenses. That'll just happen naturally. I think we probably need to do things to encourage people to come and lay down that 10 grand application fee without even knowing if they're going to get a license. That's like a non-refundable application fee, I imagine. So I don't think that we need to put a cap on numbers. We need to put a cap on the scale, the size, at least to start with. The state has a tiny tier that's a cottage industry tier, 2,500 square feet outdoor. Now, most commercial growers would say that's not even competitive. It's not enough to be competitive. Well, we can start there. If we capped at something really small, You're not going to get any big investment. You're not going to get a land rush. You're not going to get foreign nationals coming here trying to speculate. None of that's going to happen. People see the writing on the wall here in Del Norte and go, if they even do it, it's going to be a tiny scale ordinance. We're not going to bring our millions to Del Norte and try to make a bunch of money. It's not going to work. That's a super easy, natural way to restrict it. Trinity County has a residency requirement. I don't know if they still don't. I mean, it was not a problem for them. Maybe it changed. If we can't do a residency requirement, then we can scale it small. There's no lawsuits. Nobody can sue the county for saying we're only going to do the first tier of licensing. So I think that's just a really easy way to keep it tiny. And we don't have huge giant grow problems here in Del Norte. We don't have big legacy problems of cleanups, the pictures from YOLO. We don't really have that going on here. It's not an issue.
Jesse, if you don't mind, you bring up an interesting point. I was going to ask John a little bit about it because he alluded to it in this conversation. I've been educated myself along the way, and these conversations have really helped me get there. A lot of people I have a great deal of respect for have brought up this conversation specific to CBDs. You've mentioned it here today. Where do you, knowing, since you helped lead the community collective per se, and you're having conversations with many growers in the community, where is everybody thinking along the same line with this CBDs versus THC?
No, not everybody thinks the same way, for sure. I mean, definitely in the industry, drug strains, for recreational use realistically is where the market is. People use 215 cards to get recreational cannabis.
Okay.
And so it's high THC dominant strains is where the market is. It's where the money is. So yeah, the people who are pushing for CBD medicine, they're like salt of the earth people. They're like sacrificing to do something that they really believe in. Sure. When they could be making a lot of money.
Because
they believe
getting
in it.
high aspects of having THC or having, I think I confused what you said, because of the CBDs in the marijuana.
Sure, yeah. Growing CBD crops is not as good a money-making venture, especially currently. The market is for high THC crops, which is generally used recreationally, even under the guise of medical. But there's a lot of industries there's huge industries all around CBD medicine. There's a lot of manufacturing, extraction is geared around CBD medicine, lab testing. It's a real thing. It's not like, a hippie in his backyard growing plants and then making medicine out of it. It's like real pharmaceutical medicine. The veil will be lifted when the federal government decides to play ball.
Sure.
And it's a huge industry that's morally unarguable with, honestly, I think. The CBD medicine and the way it helps people is very difficult to argue with. And the only people who I think attempt to argue with it are those who just don't understand it and haven't learned about it, haven't educated themselves on it. So it could be something, it's not CBD dominant crops or allowing only CBD crops, let's say Del Norte said we're going to have only CBD dominant crops, period. That would be difficult. That wouldn't be commercially viable at first. But it could be. I think it definitely could be. And Del Norte, yeah, we could have 1 acre grows, we could have giant 1 acre grows, but I don't think that's appropriate here. Maybe way down the line, once we have a big flow chart, lots of people, then we could consider scaling things up if that made sense for everybody. But I think it makes sense to just start small with the smallest tier. That's the easy way to go.
We really appreciate you continuing to have these exchanges with the board. Thank you very much.
I have a question for Jesse.
Okay.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sorry, Jesse, one more.
Top of your head, I don't expect. Honestly, I was surprised it was only 22 states. We've been having this conversation with other supervisors in county since last November, and it seemed to be everybody was kind of just going to ban until we knew what the state was going to do or come close to that. It was just kind of holding off. So 22 seems small to me. How many grows do you think we have right now in Del Norte County?
Well, we have, Del Norte County is a different dynamic, and I'd like to thank the system, the sheriff, the DA has made it so we don't have a Humboldt situation, we don't have a Trinity situation. It's partly the natural topography, but we've had a policy here of not allowing outdoor grows or allowing grows where if you know about them. you know? And so we have a lot of growing that's been pushed inside, and there's no way to monitor that. And here in the county, well, people are shell-shocked. No, not even, I don't know. I mean, there's probably thousands of small indoor grows. You have to understand that people here in Delaware County are very shell-shocked from prohibition. Now, you'd ask about county council should be able to answer that Delaware County has no ordinance. We defer to the state regulations, which originally started at 6 plants, but through a series of court cases has become however you interpret these court cases. And it's not a 215 garden until the jury says it is. Well, who has the money and resources to take it to that point, right? So the drug task force and the district attorney set their own policy. The drug task force has their own ordinance that they made up. I hope you guys know about it. It's 25 plants. That's their own private ordinance that, since we used to have a 99 plant ordinance in 08, got rid of it, went to the state regulations because nobody could agree on what to go to. So the drug task force said, well, this is silly. We're just going to make our own 25 plants. But they can't be too big, and it can't look too commercial, and you can't look like you're making money unless you're this person or that person. And that's the reality. You can go ask the people who issue the prescriptions. You can ask the people who have gotten busted and gotten harassed and had their plants cut down. And that's what you find out. And so there's a real shell shock in Delaware County. The growers don't talk to each other. When we formed the Delaware Growers Association, we started getting some people coming out of the woodwork. You know, I come up here and speak. You've had a couple of others. Most people won't, Roger. Most people are too scared. You know, like, I'm happy to come to the meetings and speak openly. You know, that was great when Senator McGuire showed up, you know, and talked about the wine, and he said, you know, the wine growers aren't going to switch over because they're doing really good on their grapes, you know. But a lot of people won't come to the morning coffee and talk about it. People won't come up here to the podium and talk about it. People won't even go onto Facebook and talk about it. I mean, that's probably the worst place to do it, but people are really shell-shocked, so you can't count it. You can ask Sergeant Griffin. He knows exactly how many outdoor grows there are. They've flown over our neighborhood a couple times already this season. They do it every year. They know where they all are, because there's only a few. They can probably cover it all in one 20-minute flight. So they know what's going on exactly. The outdoor grows, indoor grows, you're never going to know. I mean, you could go do power bill investigations, I suppose. I don't know if that's legal, but they're tiny. There's families making ends meet. It's their lifeline. People who are working families, they have regular jobs, their kids play with your kids, and they have a little grow in the garage or in an outbuilding in order to make ends meet, because all the North Coast is like this. It's not just Delaware. People make ends meet that way, and so there's hundreds of little gardens, and it's going to be really difficult for any municipality to figure out how to regulate small gardens. Humboldt hasn't even touched that yet. Their commercial land use ordinance is all about big outdoor grows. They haven't touched cottage industry license, micro business licenses that the state's offering. But I don't think any county, I don't think Yolo has touched any of that cottage industry stuff, how you deal with somebody who's got 5 acres in an outbuilding.
Really appreciate it.
All right, thanks.
Thank you again. All right, any additional public comment? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and bring it back to the board. John, have a chance to come back? You've already... No, that's okay, sir.
Well, I'm just going to touch on something here.
Sir, public comment is over.
Well, I've had a few more.
I know. I'd love to have you speak to me after the meeting, if that's okay, but our public session is closed at this point. And we're going to be having more conversations here in the near future on this.
It was about the outdoor grows, and what I witnessed personally.
Thank you, John.
Was a big box man pulling out of a little road over there, and as part of your a nice little company is working here. They make plenty of money, but they're
thank you.
I don't know what they're doing to supporting their own little personal issues or whatever, but
I'll be more than happy to discuss that with you after the meeting. John, please. Thanks for sticking around through that public comment.
Sure.
Folks here in this community, they've shared quite a bit with us, as you can see. I'm sure you experienced something to a similar nature in Yolo over the past year and a half. You know, one of the one of the things that strikes me about the conversation that we're having here today, and one of the reasons I really wanted to hear from you, is because you guys have really started to put in place what the cost of rolling out regulation in Yolo County was going to be. And that's really what I wanted the board to take a look at. Now, absolutely, we're not the same size as Yolo. Nobody's going to compare apples to oranges on that. But as far as staffing levels and what it takes to implement a regulation and all the departments it touches, that's going to be pretty much the same across the board.
Absolutely.
We could certainly scale that down, but there's no question in my mind, if we were to roll out a type of ordinance that allowed medical at a certain scale, we're probably going to need every one of those positions here in Delaware County to help regulate this thing properly. There's no doubt in my mind. And I really wanted us to get a handle on that piece of it. And I think your org chart and where it touched the different pieces of the county was extremely helpful towards that.
So for us and for everybody's information, I'm pro medical marijuana. We have a medical marijuana program, so it's not all about enforcement and costs. Keep in mind that we have 35 acres out of 395,000 agricultural acres, so I can guarantee you guys have 35 acres this fits into here and there. My suggestion is it takes this kind of staffing level, and it's just because when you go out and you look at these mixed light facilities, none of them comply with the building code. None of them comply with the electrical code. So you've got that whole building planning component that you're going to have to deal with. So you're going to have a similar org chart. You may not have as many. The scale does matter. Here's another mistake that we made. We didn't anticipate scale, because the conversations were the same in Yolo County. We started out with a lot of little growers. The minute the board green lighted it, we got big growers. And all the folks that were in the room that were the small growers that we wanted to permit, it was only a handful of them that stepped forward because they're scared. Just everybody else, it's exactly the same thing. But it was everybody that was waiting to see what you're going to do that ran through the door. So just kind of be aware and then we started, we were thinking, 10,000 square feet, great, small, tier 1, everybody put it in a tier 1. The minute they got their first license, they all went to a tier 3, which is 1 acre outdoor, or the 23,000 square foot mixed light facility. So just be aware that things change very rapidly. Pilot programs are your best friend. So starting small, let's say you want to figure out what a 23,000 square foot mixed light facility is. Do it on a pilot basis. Allow your staff the experience to build your ordinance. They need to see these facilities. They need to see the bad ones. They need to see the good ones. And the growers need to invite your staff in to do those full-blown inspections. In the beginning, it should be very much voluntary. It should be, hey, here's the things that we note that are violations that you need to fix. It helps them, by the way. So those are important aspects. Again, we started in Yolo County down the path of let's put an interim ordinance in place so we can see what we need to do the regulation. That's how we got to the cost. In the CBD, I wanted it at 50 cents a square foot. I couldn't get, once they did the cost model, I couldn't get it down that low, or it would have been at 50 cents, because it's one of those pieces that it's not economic. So if you really want to encourage that medical market, which is the CBD, there's no psychoactive effect of CBD dominant strains, so it's pretty safe, and law enforcement for Yolo County was like, hey, that's not a big deal. If everybody did that, we wouldn't care. So we tried to give it that bigger break to encourage it, because it isn't economic at this time. So those are kind of the things that we've learned, and we learn stuff every day. But pilot program, let your staff come together as a group so they can understand what they need to look at and who needs to be involved.
Yeah, your warning is well heeded, because I know, having conversations with real estate agents, there are those folks looking at Delaware County with the very prospect that Delaware County will take a step towards commercialization of some form, whether it's recreation or medical. And that those conversations are real. They've happened currently, and we've had one together. So I know folks are looking at us. I appreciate those comments. I don't think this is a static environment by any stretch of the imagination.
And I believe in regulation, so regulation is the way to go. If you want to control the bad stuff that happens in the environment, regulate it, because then you have an opportunity. Ban is, in my mind, I'll give you my opinion, ban is completely the opposite of where you want to be. You want to be engaged with the industry and regulated. A lot of your growers, they're going to be fully willing to comply, and they will tell you who the guys are that aren't willing to comply because they're their competitors. So the industry is your best friend.
Thank you. Any further questions for John? Okay. John,
All right.
thank you so much for your time to come to Del Norte County. We hope you enjoyed your little bit of time here in our community.
Absolutely.
Take a little bit of home with you, especially the cool air.
You bet.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Again. And with that, we're going to adjourn because I know there's a city council meeting this evening. Thank you again. We'll keep you fully posted on when our next discussion will be. Good to see everybody tonight. Have a great evening.